Kurt Thomas and Dennis Rodman had a bit of a dust-up that day, and they sort of went head-to-head like a couple of dueling antelopes. I don't know what an antelope is, but they went clashing horns, and old Kurt Thomas looked like a very mean bugger, so that was good to see.
Kurt Thomas had the crazy eyes, and he's one of those guys that did not mind a push and shove and beyond.
Then you are in Australia right now.
You're talking NBA basketball. You're talking great teams. You're talking great individual players.
Takes it off, and there's number 23, and of course Johnny goes nuts.
We're all getting goosebumps thinking about it now.
I just tried to go out there and play my game.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Adam. I don't like anybody. I'm not a people person.
Strand, you made the pass, yes. Christian, can you catch the ball? Yes.
All the stars were aligned and all the muscles fired at the right time, and I was able to get off the ground and throw one down.
I was saving that as a surprise for you.
And now, introducing your host for In All Airness, Adam Ryan.
Welcome to episode 29. Thanks for joining me. My website, inallairness.com. Just add a / and the episode number to view show notes. Today, I'm pleased to welcome a great friend of mine, Reese Pedretti, onto the show. It's a pleasure to have him on. We've known each other for well over 10 years. We will be talking about the 1995 NBA draft. We talk about the top 10 picks, other notable moments and players that were selected past that top 10, and plenty more things as well, including a couple of small detours on some related topics, including a pre-Olympics exhibition game in Melbourne in the year 2000 that involved Vince Carter, which is quite interesting. We mentioned a term that the crowd chant at Vince Carter, and it rhymes with the word banker. So if you're easily offended, just skip ahead 30 seconds at around about the 8-minute and 20-second mark. We also talk about my sighting of a few Team USA players in a Sydney casino during the 2000 Olympics as well. Plus, you'll learn how I was ejected from a local basketball game before the tip-off, quite amusing, and Reese brings up the TV series Basketball Wives for no apparent reason. One other quick note, I do mention that the great Arvydas Sabonis was a 47-year-old rookie in this episode. Now, of course, that's just my exaggerating. He was 31 years old at the time he entered the NBA. Now, on to the show. Today, I'd like to welcome a new friend of the show, Reese Pedretti. How are you, mate?
Very well, thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Thanks for joining me on the show, and we've known each other for some time now, well over 10 years, so going back quite a way, and some fun times. Now, just before we get into today's chat, mate, in the last few weeks, you and James McKern have launched what is called Hoops Podcast. Can you tell us about it, mate? You're about 5 or 6 episodes in. You've had a couple of guests as well. Quickly, just talk about that, mate.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Yeah, me and Buff, he's a younger brother, a guy that I play guitar and do a few gigs around town with, and we get together and we love talking hoops, so we decided to get back on the podcast train and get back into it. So yeah, it's been going great so far, having a ball. I was lucky enough to speak to Joe Beast, a.k.a. Joe Smith, the number 1 draft pick in 1995 for the Golden State Warriors. So he was an absolute gem to talk to. And also Darryl McDonald, the Aussie basketball legend from the North Melbourne Giants. And I just want to throw a shout-out thank you to Keith Kloss, the ex-LA Clipper, for teeing the interview with Joe Smith. He was actually instrumental getting that one going. So thanks, Keith, the boss.
Good value, Keith Kloss.
Keith's an absolute legend. He still tweets me to this day, just direct messages me and asks me how I'm going, just out of the blue and stuff like that. So fair to say we're mates.
Yep, no doubt, mate. Let's just get straight into the content, mate. We're going to be talking today about the 1995 NBA draft, and it was held in Toronto, Canada. But before we actually get to the draft itself, we better quickly touch on the expansion draft, which happened 4 days prior. So on June 24th of 1995, the expansion draft was held. The 2 new teams that were entering the league were the Toronto Raptors and the Vancouver Grizzlies. Now, the Raptors were coached by Brendan Malone at the time, and they were awarded an expansion team in 1993, and the Vancouver Grizzlies were led by Brian Winters in 1994. They were announced as an expansion team. So they both entered the league in the 96 season. So based on a coin flip, mate, which was won by the Grizzlies, they chose to receive the higher 1995 NBA draft pick. So that meant that Toronto could select first in the expansion draft, and then selections alternated thereafter, with both teams stocking their rosters until one player from each of the 27 existing franchises was selected. Now, there's a couple of quick notable players that I'd like to mention. Toronto selected BJ Armstrong from the Chicago Bulls. He was then on-traded to the Golden State Warriors for 5 players. Jerome Kersey was selected from Portland, and Willie Anderson was selected from San Antonio Spurs. And for the Grizzlies, they selected Greg Anthony of the New York Knicks, Byron Scott from the Indiana Pacers, and Blue Edwards of the Utah Jazz. So they were a couple of notable players. Is there anything you'd like to mention, mate, about the 95 expansion draft?
Firstly, mate, congratulations. You didn't call them the Toronto Craptors, which you are known to mention them as. But also, AC Earl was drafted by the Toronto Raptors, and he was a big fella that came over to Australia for a year or two and tore it up in the NBL, which, as you and me have spoke about a lot, mate, we think a lot of NBA players or ex-NBA players should make their way over to the NBL and tear it up. But yeah, no, look, it was good to see 2 new teams and 2 new uniforms and a couple of new courts to get excited for. I remember being pretty excited about it.
Exactly right, mate. Now let's get into the draft itself. The 95 NBA draft was held on June the 28th, 1995. As I said, it was in Toronto, Canada. There were 58 players selected, and 50 of those went on to play in the NBA. Now, the Warriors had the worst record the season prior. They were 26-56, so they had the first selection in the draft. The number 1 pick in the 95 draft was Joe Smith out of Maryland. He was a sophomore, so he left after his second season, and he came out with averages of 20.2 points a game and 10.7 boards and plenty of hype. He was the number 1 pick in the draft.
There was a lot of talk leading up to the number 1 pick too as to whether it might be, there's a couple of names thrown in the hat, McDyess, Rasheed Wallace and Jerry Stackhouse, but Joe Smith was definitely, he was the National Player of the Year, and as you rattled off his stats before, he was by far probably the standout college player and a well-deserved number 1 pick. He's no average Joe.
yeah, good work. I love a good wordplay and good puns, so keep those coming, mate. Now, the second pick in the draft, mate, went with the LA Clippers. They selected Antonio McDyess, the very athletic player out of Alabama, and he also left after his sophomore year. The first 4 picks were actually all sophomores. He had averages of just under 13 points a game, along with 9.3 rebounds a game. But the Clippers then traded him, along with Randy Woods, to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for Brent Bones Barry and Rodney Rogers. So the Clippers did send him away rather quickly after making that selection.
He played with Denver for a couple of years and had quite a good sort of rookie campaign, but then ended up at Phoenix just for 1 year. And I remember that team being quite fun to watch with your Rex Chapmans and Danny Manning, Cedric Ceballos and Uncle Cliffy, one of your ex-interviews that you've had on here, mate, and played there for 1 year, then ended up going back to Denver for 4 years and becoming an absolute gun of a player. And he had a 50-point game at one point. He was fun to watch. And even at the end of his career, when he was at Detroit and at San Antonio, he was still a good player. Yeah, was able to contribute, whether it be off the bench or what. But I remember seeing him, Adam, I'm not sure if you were there at that exhibition game, the USA versus Australia in Melbourne. Did you get to that?
No, I didn't. You're talking about the pre-Olympic exhibition in 2000?
I am, mate. I thought you might have been there.
I don't have any excuse why I wasn't there because I only lived about an hour and a half away, as you did, of course, and for some unknown reason didn't go, and it was one of the most fantastic games as far as exhibitions go, given a couple of the on-court antics that happened surrounding one Vince Carter.
Yeah, well, I was able to sneak a video camera in and film a lot of the warm-ups. So I've got a lot of about 25 minutes of footage of warm-up dunks and things like that, and I was able to get the footage of Shane Heal and Vince Carter having a bit of a dust-up, and I know that you probably don't like swearing on this podcast, mate, but I did get involved in the chant that Australia decided to chant Carter's a wanker. So I was caught up in that. We went from cheering him with every dunk that he made in the warm-ups. 10 minutes later, we're chanting, "You are a wanker." So it was quite a funny turn of events, but it was something in history that it'll go down, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, he went from being a hero to a villain rather quickly, and it all started after Andrew Gaze launched a three-point shot. He got tangled up with Carter, ended up near mid-court, and as you said, Shane the Hammer Heel came over and looked after his mate and started drawing straight away with Carter, and it was on for young and old. And actually, if you do have the footage of that still, I'd be very interested in uploading some of that to my website if you're interested.
Definitely, mate, for sure. Now, I've got it all on VHS. Yeah, about 25 minutes of dunks. Lee Carter threw down a 360 at one point. And also, it was quite funny. I know this has got nothing to do with the 95 draft, but it is a story that I find quite interesting, that when Carter came out for the warm-ups, he came out about 10 minutes after everyone else on his own and ended up sort of standing over by the bench on the sidelines, doing his own stretches and not actually... I watched this very closely, and he did not actually speak to one player for about a good 20 minutes. During that time, you've got Steve Smith backing down Vin Baker and hitting jump shots and little one-on-one games between Mourning, and it was just huge. It was amazing stuff. But to see Vince, the youngest player in the team, not actually speak to one person during the 20-minute warm-ups was mind-boggling. Very, very interesting stuff.
That is unusual. And I've got one little tidbit I can add. I did go to the 2000 Olympics. Didn't actually get to see a USA game, but I did get to see Australia take on Russia in one of their pivotal games that they had to win after a slow start in the basketball tournament. And at Star City Casino in Sydney at about midnight or a bit after midnight, for no apparent reason, I was just in the roulette area, just wandering around with a couple of mates, and none other than Ray Allen, Antonio McDyess and a few other guys from Team USA just strolled past. And they were playing the next day, mind you. So that was just crazy. I had no chance to react. I just turned around and all of a sudden the entourage was there alongside these just massive guys. Clearly you could tell, oh man, that's Team USA guys walking past, just going through like there's no worries in the world whatsoever. And they were playing an important game the very next day. So little tidbit there I thought I'd throw in.
It's exciting stuff. Yeah, I can imagine. I remember we yelled out to Steve Smith during the game. Steve Smith from, I think he was at the Hawks at the time. 3 or 4 of us boys, we yelled out, "Hey, Smithy, give us a wave." And he turned around and he waved his hand. I actually clicked a photo too, and the hand come down, but I got him smiling at us. So that was exciting stuff. Good times.
Nice one. If you can actually provide any of that sort of media you've just talked about, I'll gladly put that up on the site for people to check out, because that's the sort of stuff that I love, those sort of random stories and bits of footage like that. So please do.
Definitely, mate.
The third pick in the 95 draft went to the Philadelphia 76ers, and they selected the first of 2 North Carolina players who would enter the top 10, and it was Jerry Stackhouse out of North Carolina. He had 15.7 points a game along with 6.6 boards. The Sixers snapped him up rather quickly, and as of this recording, I think he has all but retired. The last game he played was Game 4 of the Bulls and Nets 2013 NBA playoff series. Didn't play the last 3 games, so we'll see what happens if he actually has officially retired or not. A great career overall from Jerry Stackhouse.
Oh, for sure, mate. He has had an absolute really good career, but he was the start of the next Michael Jordan era of players. There was a lot of talk, is he the next Michael Jordan, obviously coming from North Carolina and being a high flyer and stuff like that. So unfortunately, with that tag coming in, he's difficult shoes to fill, but I think Jerry Stackhouse had an awesome career. He was awesome in the clutch, hit a lot of game-winning shots, teamed up with Allen Iverson there for many a year at Philly, and made that team really exciting to watch. I think he's done. I think he's retired.
Stackhouse and MJ actually were teammates with the Wizards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Stackhouse and MJ actually did team up later in Jordan's career when they were both on the Washington Wizards roster. But we'll pretend that Jordan never played for the Wizards. Pick number 4, Rasheed Wallace, another North Carolina Tar Heel. He was selected by the Washington Bullets. 13 points a game and 7.5 rebounds per contest. A fantastic career, and he's only just called quits on his career as well. Now he's the assistant coach with the Detroit Pistons at the time we're recording this. What is there to say about Rasheed that hasn't already been said, mate? An incredibly illustrious career, perhaps notorious more for his technical fouls and reactions on court, but you can't overlook the incredible talent that he had and was a fantastic player for many, many years in the NBA.
Yeah, completely agree, mate. He was definitely fun to watch. He was exciting. He was entertaining for a fan to watch. He loved three-point shot too. I enjoyed his range. He was inside and outside. Did you know that, a little stat that I found out, he only actually shot 4 3-pointers in his 2 years as a Tar Heel, which I thought was quite funny because the three-point shot became quite a big part of his career, especially later in his career. 10 points a game and 4 rebounds as a rookie, but got traded after 1 year from the Bullets to the Blazers. The Bullets needed a point guard. They only had Mark Price and an old Scotty Skiles, so they were looking for another point guard, so they traded him off in a deal to get Rod Strickland, and that's where Rasheed's career really took off when he was at the Blazers. Yeah, he really tore it up there and teamed up with your Jermaine O'Neals and your Isaiah Riders and Kenny Andersons, and his career really took off and was great to watch.
A couple of interesting characters there you mentioned too as far as personalities and on-court demeanour. So Rasheed was known a lot for his anger and on-court, but he just displayed his raw emotion and you couldn't just lock it in there. He wanted to get that out, and of course it was probably to his detriment at times, but still a fantastic career from Rasheed.
He's probably been ejected from as many games as you have, I think, on a Sunday night at the local stadium here in Bendigo.
You're probably right.
And I come a close second, I think.
I know that we both do suffer from a little white line fever. I actually, the low light of my career playing would be getting ejected from a game before it actually started. But yeah, I started mouthing the referee because he started the clock when we were waiting for players to turn up. So our game was already 4 or 5 minutes underway and we were getting close to a forfeit. I started saying to him, look, you can't start the clock yet. You're too early. And he told me to be quiet. I kept on going, and I was given the heave-ho before the jump ball even started. So, yeah, not good, mate. Not
and you
good.
didn't get your money back either.
No money back. And, I was out in the car park. All right, number 5 pick in the 95 draft, the great Kevin Garnett, who is still playing incredibly, and he's now obviously a recent signee of the Brooklyn Nets, so directly from high school into the NBA. So fantastic job from KG, the big ticket. Played for many years at the Timberwolves and really did a great job with trying to get them into the playoffs and then getting into the second round, but he was somewhat hamstrung by the players that he was with. I mean, they were a struggling team, but he did all he could, and talk about emotion. He never left anything on the floor, that's for sure. He was a fantastic player at Minnesota and then finally got his chance when he signed with Boston. So what can we also say about Garnett, mate, that hasn't really been said before?
Obviously, I was shocked to find out too that his rookie year, he actually played 28 minutes a game and averaged 10.4 points as a rookie, which the few games that we got over here in Australia, he's coming off the bench and only getting about 6 to 8 minutes from what I'd see. So to find out that he did average 28 minutes a game as a rookie was a shock to me. But I actually asked Joe Smith how KG gets pumped up and stuff like that. Joe said that most of the talking he does on the court, 90% of it is to himself to get him pumped up. But he said, you can still talk to him as long as it's about basketball and stuff like that. Once you see he's in the zone, it's only time to talk hoops. He said he was an absolute great teammate, and Garnett's one of my favourite players until I saw him in about 4 or 5 fights in a couple of seasons, and he was backpedaling and couldn't get out of there quick enough. He'd try and start them, but then wouldn't hang around to do anything. I'm not sure if KG's on your list of guests, mate, but at this stage, I'm not a massive fan anymore.
Well, I think NBA stands for nothing but air as far as his punches go, so he was definitely just throwing wild haymakers and a bit of pushing and shoving, but never really got involved in the thick of things, but certainly could talk a good game, that's for sure. Pick number 6, mate, the Vancouver Grizzlies. Big country, Bryant Reeves, out of Oklahoma State, 17.4 points a game and 8.5 rebounds. He played all 4 years at Oklahoma State and came into the league offering plenty, you'd think, but unfortunately his career didn't quite live up to the expectations of most people, but he still did have a solid career when you look at his numbers, even though he didn't play for too many seasons. I guess you think about the opportunities missed in terms of talking about big country.
Oh, for sure, mate. Massive numbers in college and had a good NBA career, but unfortunately it was his back and he had some weight issues, I think, from what I could tell. He did just sign a 6-year, $61 million deal too with the Grizzlies before retiring a couple of years after that. So, yeah, a guy loved his game. He was a workhorse. Obviously back and weight issues. Unfortunately finished his career earlier than expected.
Yeah, indeed. Now, pick number 7, the next expansion team, the Raptors. They selected Mighty Mouse, Damon Stoudemire, out of the Arizona Wildcats, and he averaged 15 points a game along with 5.4 assists, and he also played all 4 years at Arizona. The Raptors took him with pick number 7, and he turned out to be Rookie of the Year. Had tremendous hype, did some amazing things throughout the season, was very flashy, and a really good first year for Damon Stoudemire, who had quite a long NBA career himself.
I like Damon Stoudemire. His rookie year was amazing. The numbers were just ridiculous. You've actually spoke about him on another podcast, and I think it was with Steenie, and talked about his numbers that were just absolutely amazing for a first-year player. I remember being the draft was in Toronto, the Toronto fans were actually chanting, "We want Ed." So they wanted Ed O'Bannon, who was actually in the Pac-10 Player of the Year with Damon Stoudemire that year. One thing about Damon Stoudemire, I'm not sure if you know, Adam, he holds an NBA record, the most threes shot in a game. He launched 21 from long range one day, his last game as a Blazer, which he only made 5 of them. So then the last time I saw a bloke shoot 21 threes was you, Adam, on a Sunday night. I think you shot 27 one night, and I think you made 2. So, but yeah, poor old Damon Stoudemire. But he also, in college, he shot more 3-pointers than he did 2-pointers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's interesting.
He shot 1,343 field goals, and 677 of them were threes. So over half were 3-pointers.
That's off the top of your head, is it?
Yes. Exactly.
I love a good stat, mate. Thanks for that little sledge too about the 3-point shooting on my behalf. I appreciate it. I think you're only counting the first half too. I've probably jacked up another 10 in the second half.
No, you got ejected at half-time.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. All right. So with pick number 8, the Portland Trailblazers selected Sean Respite out of Michigan State from the Spartans. Now, he was averaging 12 points a game and 2.9 rebounds per contest, and he was a 4-year player at Michigan State. He entered the draft with plenty of hype as well. Unfortunately, his career never really took off, and the Blazers actually traded him to Milwaukee in exchange for Gary Trent and a 1997 first-round draft pick, which turned out to be Paul Grant, who had a total of 16 career NBA games. So didn't really work out all that well for all those involved. But we know that there was a reason behind that, of course. He actually had stomach cancer during his NBA career.
He found that out in his rookie season and didn't actually tell anyone. I think he told his coach, was the only one he told for a couple of years. And 1 year he had treatment on the cancer and then played a summer league game later that day. So, look, he really tried to make his career work. But unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people know that. And I think that would have played with his mind a lot. And being NBA is quite as much a mind game as it is physical, his career didn't go as well as he might have hoped.
For sure, mate. I'm not certainly trying to talk down his NBA efforts. He played 172 games in 4 NBA seasons and, of course, had that stomach cancer and kept it very quiet, as you said. So he was not trying to make any excuses for himself, which was very respectable in terms of actually not just coming out and saying that's what he actually had wrong with him. So it's a massive effort to even still play in the NBA at that level and to be fighting such a devastating cancer as well. So it must be said that he did struggle mightily given the fact that he was obviously battling stomach cancer from a part of his journey in the NBA.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly too sure what he's doing at this point in time, but I know a couple of years ago he was hired by the Minnesota Timberwolves to be a player development coach, and before that he spent some time in the development league doing some player development and stuff, so he's obviously still around the game and making quite a career out of the NBA.
Now, you mentioned this guy a little bit earlier. With the number 9 pick in the draft, the New Jersey Nets selected Ed O'Bannon out of UCLA, and he was a much-touted college player. He left UCLA after his 4 seasons with averages of 15.5 points a game along with 7 rebounds a game. But unfortunately, his NBA career, you'd have to suggest that you don't like to use the word bust all that freely. However, he only played 128 games in 2 NBA seasons, and for a number 9 draft pick, that's not really what you're hoping for as a franchise.
No, not at all, mate. His college career was amazing, and I don't know whether it was just the arthritis in the knee that he had, but look, he didn't seem like he had the ticker to really make it in the NBA. He had one massive dunk on Sean Bradley on the break, which is a great highlight. I'm sure you've seen it, Adam. And talking about busts, moving on, so that's Ed O'Bannon.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, that's a classic. Now, rounding out the top 10, mate, the Miami Heat selected Kurt Thomas from Texas Christian. Now, he played all 4 years in college, and he averaged 14.7 points a game and 7.6 rebounds a game. He led the nation in Division I scoring in his senior season in 1995 with 28.9 points a game and 14.6 rebounds a game. So they're just beast numbers. Quite incredible, really. Kurt Thomas became only the 3rd player behind Hank Gathers and X-Man Xavier McDaniel to lead the nation in scoring and rebounding in the same season. A very good, long career. Played till past the age of 40. So he's only just recently hung up the boots, actually, mate.
Yeah, mate, look, sorry if I don't sound too surprised there. You stole my stats on him there. I actually did the research on that and thought I was going to excite you with that one, but you've come out and told me. Mate, look, yeah, Kurt Thomas is an absolute gun. He was still on a roster last year at the Knicks, so yeah, a long-standing NBA player. I remember back in his rookie season, he had a run-in with Dennis Rodman. There was a game against the Heat and the Bulls, and I think that was the game where Jordan hit 2 3-pointers just before the buzzer, and then the other one on the buzzer. I think he got a steal. And anyway, Kurt Thomas and Dennis Rodman had a bit of a dust-up that day, and they sort of went head-to-head like a couple of dueling antelopes. I don't know what an antelope is, but they went clashing horns, and well, Kurt Thomas looked like a very mean bugger, so that was good to see.
Yeah. Kurt Thomas had the crazy eyes. Anytime he gave someone the stare down, you certainly knew about it, and he's one of those guys that did not mind a push and shove and beyond. So he got into many a skirmish back in the day. Yeah, back on those Heat teams, particularly when they were battling up against the Bulls, there's plenty of antics going on behind the scenes with Kurt Thomas and Dennis Rodman. Anybody else want to have a go as well, mind you.
You're dead right, Adam Ryan.
The butting antelopes, I like that too. That's very nice. Well played. So that was the top 10 picks, mate. The 1995 NBA draft, mate, it produced 6 All-Stars. Michael Finley, Kevin Garnett, Antonio McDyess, Theo Ratliff, Jerry Stackhouse, and Rasheed Wallace. So plenty of great players came out of that draft, and 6 of them became All-Stars.
Yeah, mate, look, I've got some Michael Finley footage that you might get you a little bit excited. It's a Michael Jordan versus Michael Finley one-on-one when Finley was in high school.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you have seen it, have you?
I have seen that clip. It's a brief 30-second clip or thereabouts where they go up against one another in a game of one-on-one. Yes.
I was also going to mention, too, with Finley, he was one of my favourite players for many years. Yeah, big dunks in the dunk comp, game-winning shots. I remember in his rookie season when he was at Phoenix, they were down, I think, 11 points with 50 seconds left, and they've come back and he's hit a couple of threes and then hits the jump shot on the break. And, yeah, look, obviously, yeah, I was a big Michael Finley fan.
That was a game against the Lakers, I'm pretty sure you're talking about.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, pull up near the free throw line extended, I'm pretty sure, at the buzzer. Finley, there are a few more notable players in this particular draft, and Michael Finley out of Wisconsin. He was an all-rookie first team, 2-time All-Star, scored more than 17,000 NBA points, and won a title with the Spurs in 2007. A couple of other players that were notable selections. Number 15 picked by the Nuggets and then sent to the LA Clippers, was Brent Barry out of Oregon State. He had 14 seasons and is a 2-time NBA champion as well. Pick number 43, the Milwaukee Bucks selected Eric Snow out of Michigan State. Now, he played in 3 NBA finals, over 840 NBA games, and career averages of about 7 points, 5 assists, and 1 steal a game. But the Bucks traded him to Seattle on draft day, and he ended up playing in the NBA finals in 1996. So a nice welcome into the NBA for Eric Snow. He was in the NBA finals within his second season.
I used to follow the Sonics back in the day, and Eric Snow was he played quite a few years with the Sonics, and yeah, he was good to watch. But also, I just want to mention pick number 35 was ex-Michigan Wolverine and possible interviewee on the Hoops podcast in talks at the moment. But yeah, Jimmy King. He only played the one season with the Raptors and got close to making a Denver roster and even a Pacers roster, I think. I just wanted to mention Jimmy King because I love my Michigan boys.
You do indeed, mate. You're a devoted Michigan fan. Some more players that were selected that we just can't go into too much depth about. Corliss Williamson, Theo Ratliff, who I mentioned earlier, who's actually an all-star. Bobby Sura, Eric Williams, Travis Best, Alan Henderson, Greg Ostertag, and Jason Caffey, mate. So some more players that certainly have many different NBA stories that we could go into, but there are a couple of guys that when I scanned the list, I needed to mention them as well.
Yeah, well, I'll actually throw in a couple of others as well. Fred Hoiberg was quite the player, and even Don Reed was he played with the Pistons for 8 seasons, and he was an absolute workhorse. And I'm not sure if did you mention Tyus Edney?
Didn't mention Tyus Edney out of UCLA, and Don Reed, number 52 for the Pistons, I'm pretty sure.
There it is.
Gotta love it. Yep.
And also Eric Williams played with the Boston Celtics, who recently popped into the public eye on the TV show Basketball Wives. Had a heated discussion with the girlfriend, the wife, and threw a drink in her face. That's finished off the season. He said to her, "Be real careful, okay? Be real careful, splash in the face."
Wow. I don't even know what to say to that. That's a cliffhanger if I've ever heard one, mate. Absolute cliffhanger there. And I did mention Eric Williams in that list, so thanks for listening.
Did? And I will just mention the 12th pick, Cherokee Parks, who was quite a good NBA player, but just turned into an inked-up bandana-wearing hippie, really.
Hello to Cherokee if you're listening. That's the first and only time I'll have any interaction with him. Thanks, mate. All right, a couple more random stats, mate. Kevin Garnett is the all-time leading scorer from this draft class. As of the time of this recording, he's got 25,274 NBA points. What do you think about Big Country, mate? We did talk about him earlier, but his NBA career averages are 12.5 points a game and just a tick under 7 rebounds per game in 6 seasons. So he played only 395 NBA games, and he was the number 6 pick. I don't really think you can consider him a bust. I think he did enough to warrant being a solid NBA player, no pun intended, and just doing enough to avoid that bust bubble conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And to answer your question, I don't think about Big Country Reeves that often, but now that you've brought it up, look, I think those numbers and at the pick that he was, you're fair to say that he probably wasn't a bust. And I think that's the issue with the way we look at this sometimes. You know, you see a number 1 pick like a Joe Smith who didn't have the skills or the talents of a LeBron or make the impact that some of these number 1 picks have done. but still have played very well. So, but being the number one pick, people are expecting a lot more from you. But if you're just a later first round pick, later in the top 10, you don't have to do as well to be not considered a bust.
Well said, mate. Very well said. We'll just have a quick look at the all-rookie first and second teams from the 96 season. Now, the first team was Antonio McDyess, Joe Smith, Jerry Stackhouse, Damon Stoudemire, and in a tie, Michael Finley and Arvydas Sabonis. The big 7'4" legend, the European legend, Arvydas Sabonis, actually rounded out the first team. So Sabonis was a 47-year-old rookie. Quite incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, he was drafted back in 1986 at 21st pick and didn't actually obviously come over to the NBA for about 10 years. And he was great to watch. Some of his Showtime passes were my favourite things to watch on Arvydas. I remember he threw this behind-the-back pass once. I don't know if you've seen it, Adam, but when he threw the behind-the-back pass, he just paused and stopped. And then...
that's right.
He stood there about half court with this just like a statue, and the ball was laid up, and he was just standing there. It was just it was really pretty to watch. And
that is true.
Yeah. Can I just throw in, mate, just when we go back to random stats, I don't want to control the show here, but I will just take control at this moment. Bobby Sura from the Cleveland Cavaliers, who was pick number 17, he almost had 3 triple-doubles in a row when he was an Atlanta Hawk during his career. The third triple-double did not get allowed, though, because he actually, just before the final buzzer, he intentionally missed a layup to get his 10th rebound, and David Stern actually said, "Sorry, Bobby, that one doesn't count." So I thought that was interesting and quite a good story to tell.
I actually never knew that. The sad thing is that reminds me of another moment where Cleveland Cavalier, inverted comma, bad boy, Ricky Davis, did a similar thing where he deliberately missed a shot on his own defensive basket to get a rebound to then pad his stats to get a triple-double. And it was against the Utah Jazz in Cleveland. Jerry Sloan went berserk on the bench after that had happened, because that goes against everything that Jerry Sloan's ever done in his career as a player and as a coach. He doesn't want to see that sort of nonsense. So that reminded me of a random moment as well. Speaking of the Cavaliers, who Bobby Sura also played with.
Yeah, definitely some interesting stories, Adam, and that was one of your finest.
Oh, that's undoubtedly the case. Thank you very much. And one more thing about Sabonis. Back in the 80s, he was just a man-mountain, and unfortunately, he was riddled with injuries by the time he did get his chance to shine in the NBA.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching Arvydas.
That was always a Sabonis to see him play, I suppose. That's a shocker. That is a shocker. All right, second team, all rookie, mate. Brent Bones Barry, Tyus Edney out of UCLA, as you said. KG, Kevin Garnett, Big Country Reeves, and Rasheed Wallace round out the second team selections. No real surprises there, I guess.
I think even the way you look at it, the second team could probably give the first team a run for their money too, I reckon.
Yeah, that's possible, yeah.
They're all good players, so I guess it would be a close game.
All right, mate. That pretty much will round out the 1995 NBA draft. How can people get in touch with you, mate, if they want to find out some more about you? I will include this information in the show notes.
Yeah, Twitter's usually best. If you're a basketball fan, you should be on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is @Pumper5. That's PUMPA5. Or just started up one for the podcast, which is @Hoops Podcast, all one word. Yeah, so you can contact me anywhere like that.
Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap this baby up?
No, mate, I think it's all pretty good. That was very enjoyable to take that trip down memory lane with you, and I'm sure we'll do it again, whether it's recorded and put on a podcast or whether we just do it again ourselves and it's just us two. But absolute pleasure, and congratulations, Adam, with everything you're doing with the podcast. Yeah, I know a lot of people that are avid listeners and absolutely enjoy what you're doing. And once again, Adam, it was good fun.
Thanks again, Reece. It's been great chatting to you, mate, and I'm sure we'll do it again in the near future.
You too, Adam. Keep doing backboard slap layups.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter @inallairness. Please visit the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show.